Welcome to Porch Play Chats, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, which are conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. Joining me on the porch today is Lisa Murphy. Hi, Lisa, one of our board members.
Hello.
And Debbie Ray is with us today. And Debbie Ray is the professor of I can never say this word.
Kinesiology.
Thank you so much. And founding director of the LiiNK Project at Texas Christian University. Dr. Ray's been an educator for the past 42 years, the first 11 years in K-12 physical education, and the last 31 years at the university level, preparing physical education teachers and researching children through physical activity and play. She's an author, researcher, motivational speaker, educational consultant, and the behavior change trainer. So the LiiNK Project is like worldwide known. So we're so excited to hear about the project, more about the project, and to really zone in on what in a perfect world school would look like, because I don't think we're there at all. And so when we think
Why do you say that, Deb?
when we think about the essential elements of school, what do we need to do to get back on track? Because we are so far off track. It hurts me.
Yeah, it's hurting me every day. People tell me all the time I'm ahead of my time because people just still are not ready for what I'm pushing. And so let me just start by saying what the LiiNK Project is. And then if you want to go somewhere other than what you just said, tell me, but otherwise I'm going to launch into what a perfect world would look like in education.
That would be wonderful.
All right. So LiiNK stands for Let's Inspire Innovation in Kids, like Toys R Us. N is apostrophe. And this came from my visit to Finland back in 2012, and realizing that my childhood was being played out in that country.
Wow.
And so it was very normal for me to see that over there. But what was so shocking was that I hadn't realized how much recess and I knew physical education had been removed, except for certain times, but I didn't realize how much recess had been removed from our schools. And when I saw what was going on there and what I knew was going on in our country, I came back with a very different purpose than what I went to do. My purpose to go over there was to learn about their physical education perspective and what they were doing with recess, of course, but pretty much what could I bring back to physical educators? Because you see on my bio, that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 42 years. But when I realized that it was no longer about that, it was about the health of our kids and the fact that we weren't helping them have the whole experience for their lives, that just about cratered me right then and there. And I came back with a different mission, which was to start to transform our educational schools in very small ways, but to grow it into bigger ways. And so I'm going to talk about the small ways first, and then I'm going to talk about the big ways that they're in my book, but people aren't ready for the big waves yet, but I think they're coming. So the small ones are, I came back with 4 different areas that I felt like we needed to address education. Now, it's 10 years later, and my ideas have changed a little bit, but the 4 things that I came back with were, number 1, we needed recess throughout the day like Finland does. So Finland has it every hour, not every 60 minutes, but every hour, they have to have a 15-minute unstructured play break outside every hour. So it would look like this. At 9 o'clock, they would start school. At 9:45, they'd have an unstructured play break. At 10 o'clock, they'd be back in their classroom again. And at 10:45, they'd have another break. But that could also change as a result of what they might be doing in school. But keep in mind, they've been doing this for 40 years now. So where they've transformed to and where we are two different things.
Sure.
But where they may have started would be, this is how we do our schedule every hour, right? As they've transformed, they may be doing a drama play. You know, they've put together a play that the kids have written, and they're now acting it out, and it may take longer than 45 minutes to do it. So they may wait on their play break until 60 minutes later, but they're still going to catch up with those play breaks throughout the day. It just may be that they have to adjust it based on what they're doing. All right. So that was one thing, is every hour, you know, we're going to have a play break. Now, what that equates to in a school system in the US would be if we could have 4 of those a day and use physical education as another buffer. I call them buffers, but physical education as a buffer, and then lunch as a buffer. Then we could have those 4 plus those 2 time periods, right? And that time period for physical education, we call them specials here in the US.
Yeah.
So that physical education could be art or music as well, or technology, you know, whatever that's going on, but it's just a different way of learning than what we consider our basic content areas. So that is still what I'm doing today with LiiNK, is 4 unstructured play breaks a day, 60 minutes throughout the day. You cannot take it away for tutoring or for punishment. Those kids will still go outside, and you can't punish them outside either. They can have smaller areas to play if they, you know, if they're having some issues that day and just really having some problems being in large play areas, but you cannot remove it from them being outside and being able to play in an unstructured way. The second piece, and very critical to, I think, what US needs more than anything right now, we need several things, and I'll talk about those in a second, but really critical is we have a society, a culture within a culture that kids have forgotten what responsibility is for them. And it's not necessarily that they've forgotten, it's that parents and teachers and people around are taking responsibility away when they don't do something right, instead of allowing them to work through it and figure out how they should be doing it correctly. So what we have is a society of children and adolescents and now adults who, in some instances, just really don't know how to do things in a way that works for everyone around them. And so having some type of character curriculum, I think, is one of the most important things that we need to have, especially if we're going outside 4 times a day. Too much happens on a playground anyway, even before COVID, much less having it after COVID. And what do we have on the playground, right? So we've introduced a character curriculum that has been written by a group here in the US called Positive Action, and they're out of Idaho. But it's daily curriculum. There are 140 lessons a year, and they're scope and sequenced, and they're delivered easily through a manual that they just go each day. And so each grade level, K through 12, can actually, it's pre-K through 12, can follow their manual, use the scripts, and get through the curriculum. What's been more powerful over the years for us is that as we've introduced this, we realized that this curriculum isn't just something to teach for 15 minutes and be done each day, but it's also to use throughout the day in storytelling and saying, you know, let's think about this character that we talked about 2 days ago and where that character was very similar to where you are right now. What did that character do from a decision perspective? You think that's a decision that you probably needed to think about a little bit more before you made the one you did versus this one. And so really trying to bridge that gap. So those are the 2 pieces that we do out there with LiiNK. But there were 2 other pieces that came across the ocean that you've noticed I haven't talked about yet, and it's because we're not doing them yet. But things that I think would be the perfect world for us if we could put them in. One is I would create a different type of experience for younger kids versus older kids. So that younger kid perspective would be, they didn't go to school as long. They would only be in school in 1st and 2nd grade, even kinders would not be in school more than a half a day. None of them would.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is that there are so many other things that they can learn from around our areas without being in a school grounds, and be able to really take in that experience level that they need developmentally to get ready for a step up in content when they get back into third grade. But even in third through sixth, I wouldn't go more than 5 hours a day. Now,
Yeah.
I'm following a finished model, but I've seen it. I see what's going on. They're still getting those 15-minute breaks every hour. And these kids are doing amazing things over there. But
Mhm.
it's teaching them responsibility again. It's teaching them respect. It's teaching them that their decisions do have consequences, positive or negative, and that those things are part of what they do every day. But in that 5-hour period from third through sixth, they're getting really good stuff because it's cross-curricular.
Yes, thank you.
Cross-curricular.
Mhm.
And so if we're going to do something that's the perfect world, Finland's doing some great stuff, but we've got to start changing our mindset. We don't work in silos. We don't educate in silos. When we're outside playing, we're not saying, oh, let me read this sign and really make sure I understand this before I go do this. No,
Mhm.
we're engaging as we read. We're engaging as we go participate in something. So cross-curricular is very important. I'm tired of this 120 minutes of this, 90 minutes of this, 60 minutes and 40. You know what I'm talking about.
It's awful.
It is.
And that's not the way humans learn, right?
No.
Everything needs to be integrated. And when, when I teach curriculum and assessment classes, we say, listen, when I teach child development, I take them outside, we play for 45 minutes to an hour. I come back in and I say, tell me what you did socially, tell me what you did emotionally, tell me what you did in language, tell me what you did cognitively, tell me what you did in fine motor, tell me what you did in gross motor. And then I go, yes, everything needs to be integrated. And the other big piece, I think, in the US, our approach to education is, well, they need more time in school, instead of, no, you need to do what you should be doing better in school in this kind of approach, instead of trying to make their school year longer and their days longer, where they're just bored out of their minds.
Yes.
Because recess may or may not be available.
I think another thing that the United States is guilty of doing is taking bits and pieces from other models, as you said, but we only pick the pieces that fit into our current broken model, instead of realizing that our model isn't working, right? So we'll salt and pepper it, but it's still the same meal, with maybe some Italian seasoning or some Finnish seasoning, and then we wonder why we're still getting fat. Because it's a bad model.
Yeah, we need the overhaul, right? We need to
Yeah.
say, we're starting with a new model and kind of phase it like marketing does. Okay, we're going to have a new face to who we are. We're not going to start it today, but over the next 3 years, we're going to start phasing in some of these things. And as we phase them in, this is what they're going to look like, right?
And this is what we're going to get rid of, right? It's not like we're packing more into the same overflow closet. We're getting rid of the clothes that don't fit anymore, and we're getting a whole new wardrobe. And
I mean, even the objectives would change. We're not going to have 200 objectives that have to be covered every year in a grade level.
Yes.
Based on different subject areas. Get it down to 12 to 15, period. They go across the curriculum. And they can be covered in, and this is another area, they can be covered in recess, physical education, music, art, drama, crafts. And crafts are sewing, cooking, mechanics, metal, art, any of those kind of things, as well as the sciences, social studies, English language arts, and math.
And I think we need to do the same thing, Debbie, in early childhood. I mean, when you look at early childhood curriculum and you look at even the good ones that we label as okay, better, right? That don't test children, but that do those developmental assessments through observation, they still have way too many indicators that they're measuring. And so the teacher cannot build relationships with children because they're too busy over here trying to do this checklist and write down the evidence and take samples. It's ridiculous what we've done to the
Yeah.
system. And it's like what happened in the primary grades and middle grades and secondary grades has been pushed down, that you have to prove that what you're doing is effective. Well, you can do that with 5 fine motor milestones and 5 gross motor milestones and 5 language milestones. It doesn't have to be 20 in each
Right.
one of the categories. So we really need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And
Absolutely. Yeah, and what you're talking about, so with high school, so if we go through 3rd through 6th with 5 hours, 7 through 12 would be 6 hours. And that'd be the most that we win is 6 hours for those high school grades. But also think about, and this is still just part of the mindset of play, but in preschool, elementary time, it would be unstructured play and more collaborative, cooperative, and really not putting the competition in there at all.
Yeah.
But that also means that we're not competitive with our schools, and we're not competitive with what one school is teaching and how good they are with signs on the side of the buildings as another school, because we've gotten way too competitive, even in a school district. We've gotten too competitive with this school's better than this school. We're pitting people against each other instead of helping everybody get our children developmentally to the right place by the end of 5th grade.
Yes, absolutely.
So the 4th piece that I think needs to go into this is that we need to become, and Deb, you and Lisa both have said this just a minute ago, is that we need to become more developmentally appropriate again. That means throwing out the standardized tests, get back to, and I really like the idea that Finland does for this too, is that we don't have any grading in elementary school.
Yeah.
Instead, we have a semester report in the fall and a semester report in the spring through 5th grade that allows the teacher to say, this is where the kids are excelling, they're at level, or they're needing some improvements, but we're working on that. And by the end of 5th grade, they'll be there. And this is what they get at the end of each semester only, no grades. So there's no competition or understanding that, oh, I don't know math, I'm terrible at math. No, you don't know those concepts because you're not there yet until the end of 5th grade. Then developmentally, when about 95 to 97% of our kids are all there, then we can start the competition track. But until then, there should not be competition. These kids should really be going through, where am I? What do I care about? I mean, we see boys right now that, they may not be learning something till 2nd or 3rd grade. They're just delayed because they don't care. That's not in their purview right now, right? And for girls, they may be on with certain things and they really want to know about it. And they could care less about what these boys are doing right now, right? But that's part of development. And we keep ignoring everything Piaget and Erickson and anybody else that's been out there giving all of our developmental pieces. That doesn't change over time. Kids are kids are kids. It doesn't matter what century we're in. They're still kids, right? And they need that time to be able to engage in play in many different ways. And what I was going to say about pre-K is, and Deb, I agree with you. We need to get it down to certain things that we're focused on, but play generated.
Yes, play generated. Yes.
It should not be through sitting down and reading a book that, we're trying to get. No, it should be, hey, through cooking today, or through, looking at how we work with a hammer and a nail, or how we do with our stuff outside, or, hey, what did this flower, I wonder where this came from. I mean, these kind of things are just, that's how kids need to be learning.
I think, I don't remember, I think it was Bev Boz 100 years ago, rest in peace, Bev. I think it was one of her workshops where she said, if we actually did what development taught us, children would play play inside, outside, upside down. Children would play until they were around 7 or 8.
Yep.
And then they'd go to school.
Yep.
And then they go to school and they'd learn all the stuff that you think they need to learn.
Yeah.
And then around junior high frame,
Mhm.
they would go back to play, because what 7th grader is listening to anything other than their body? But it would all be through the arts. So
Uh-huh.
middle school would make this transformation. It would be art and drama and music and all of those specials, right? It would be nothing but that. And then if we had done that effectively, at the end of that section, they could go to college and everybody would be just fine. Just
Well,
fine. And
or-
I'm like, who's doing that? Like,
Yeah.
where could we go actually see that potentially in action? Because as I
Finland is
believe
doing that.
and
Yep.
it sounds like what you experienced when you were there.
Yeah, Finland's doing that. And yeah, it's amazing to see. And you know, that they're taking things that people have done, right? But they're saying we are not going to let go of that.
We're not going to compromise this.
These are fundamental pieces to a child's education. Everything else comes secondary, but guess what? They don't burn out on content.
Yeah.
Right.
We're burnt out by 3rd grade.
Yes,
On content.
absolutely. The other thing I really like the way you said is it by 5th grade, by 5th grade, by 5th grade, you know, that is to
Not next
right
year.
now it's the be all end all. If you're not reading at a grade level by the end of 3rd grade, there's something wrong
know.
with you or something wrong with your teacher
Yeah.
or something wrong with your school. There is no developmental theoretical research that says every child will read by the end of 3rd grade. It's
No.
not possible.
No.
It's just not possible.
My niece, I should probably tell her this now that I
Yeah,
use
go ahead and
her
tell
a
her
lot.
before it comes.
I'll tell her before she doesn't watch it. She's a senior. She hated reading, hated it. She could do it, but she hated it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't, just never ever got into it. People were worried. Oh my God. And I was like, it'll be fine. Then she found a series of books, it was like the Land of Stories series. She found it in 4th, 5th grade. Now couldn't put them down. That was like her Harry Potter, right? She
Uh-huh.
fell in love with the story. It hooked her. She started reading. She's going to medical school.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I love to tell people that story. Like everybody was like, I'm like, she's gonna be fine. She's gonna be
Yes.
fine.
Okay, let me throw out one more thing that goes exactly to this point. There's a professor that I work with over in communication sciences and disorders, so speech pathology and habilitation for the deaf. And she's working on children who either have cochlear implants
Mhm.
or their parents are struggling to have the same language with their children, right?
Mhm.
The parents can hear, the children can't, and they're struggling with that, or vice versa. But it really doesn't matter. Let me just say out front, it really doesn't matter if we're working with those types of populations or populations where everybody hears but just ignore each other. It really doesn't matter, right?
Mhm.
What matters is that what they realize is that when children are learning how to read, in the past, we've had a parent who has sat down with a child, the child goes and gets the book, brings it over, and they read the book.
Mhm.
And then the next day they bring a book over, they read it, every day there's book reading, right? But not that the child is, they're just looking at the words while the parent or whoever is reading them. What they found though, is that when children are in situations where they either can't get to a book because it's too high, or it's it's behind something that they can't get to, or maybe they're in a wheelchair or they're on crutches and they can't get to something, the person who's going to read it to them picks the book out. Here's the problem. If the child doesn't pick the book, and this goes to your story, Lisa, if the child doesn't pick the book, and what you'll find is that the child will pick the same book over and over and over again. The parent's like, don't you want to pick something? Nope, want this one.
No, I want this
Why?
one.
Because that's how they learn to read. Through
Mhm.
repetition of something they love.
So I have to tell the story of Vanessa. So Vanessa is my daughter who's now 36. Her favorite book, I read that book from the time she was 18 months old until the time she was 5. We read The Very Hungry Bear and The Red Ripe Strawberry every day.
Oh, the little mouse, the red ripe strawberry, and the big hungry bear.
Every day. She had 25 books on her bookshelf. That is the one we read every night before bed. It was just like child development back in early childhood education. Just like, okay, all right, here we go. And then we'd read the book again. And I'd be tired one night. I want to skip a page. No, mommy, you missed a page. And we'd go back. It was just perfect to what you said. And Vanessa did a wonderful job in reading. She was she was above in her grade level. And I go back to, it was because we read The Very Hungry Bear for 5.5 years every night.
And I would say the connection, and I would be curious, Debbie, if you have seen evidence of that also in that research. It's that connection.
It is, it's the connection.
100%. And I'm thinking right now of Maxine Green, also rest in peace, and her quote about you cannot teach anybody anything unless they want to be there. So, I can have 45 other books on the shelf, but today I want to read about the strawberry.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. It's what's motivating the child, right? Mm-hmm. And if the child is motivated by it, who are we to remove that from them? And now they don't want to hear what we have to say, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want that book. Let's read this book. Oh, exactly. I hate reading.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And just not being worried about developmentally when they get there, right? Yes. Not being worried about when their speech really comes to be the speech. It's going to happen. But I know we're just about out of time, but the real thing that I get frustrated about is when we think that we're going to push all the knowledge into an early childhood child because they haven't gotten it at home. We can't shove it into them just because we have control of them now.
Right.
I hope that message is loud and clear, because it's going to take the process still. We can still catch it, but we can't shove it into their little brains.
That is so true. And I think we feel so pressured in early childhood education to get children ready for what the inappropriate stuff is they have to do in kindergarten and the horribly inappropriate stuff they're having to do in first grade. So
I think we've lost faith in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. We have no trust. Yeah.
No trust. We have no trust in the system, but we also have no trust in the research, and we have no trust in the theoretical principles that our profession was founded on, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we're all about not going backwards, but there's some things we let go of that are foundational to what we do. And throwing the bathwater out with the baby every 3 years is not the foundation we should believe in.
Right.
Exactly.
It's not. You have to see something progress over time. And coming back to LiiNK one more time, we're in our 10th year, but 8th year of actually being in schools. And what we're finding is these kids that had recess for 60 minutes a day through their 5th grade time are much more stable as middle schoolers and high school kids as a result. But will people listen? No, they still don't trust that this will be okay in their district. They still have to say, well, will it work in our district? It will work anywhere. It works across all kids. It's just part of what we should be doing. But anyway.
It is part of what we should be doing. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we definitely have to have you back to talk more about this, because I think we need a revolution, an educational revolution.
We've been saying that for 3 years now, Deb.
But we really need people in every state to be part of this educational revolution, and we got to get those policymakers on board, because they're the ones that keep doing this to us. And again, I always say, I don't think they're doing it intentionally. I think they're doing it because I think that's what we have to do to get kids caught up, instead of not lengthening school days, putting in more than 10 minutes of recess that's attached to lunch a day, if you're lucky. And if you didn't finish your work, you have to stay in for recess, which is the craziest thing I think I've ever heard in
Okay.
my entire life. It is
Oh,
ridiculous. You need a break from the child. The child definitely needs a break from you.
well, and let me just say that the child that, so I get this a lot. The teacher will say, I do not want them going out to recess. They haven't done a bit of work during this last 45 minutes. Why am I giving them a reinforcement to go outside? And I said, because it's not going to help you inside. They're going to give you all kinds of crap on the inside, right? You got to let them go and play. Obviously, they don't want your learning yet. They just
Yeah.
don't.
They're just not, and just because they're fourth graders doesn't mean they're all on the same level and they
No.
all have the
No.
same interests. And it goes, everything that we do in early childhood and we should do in early childhood, it doesn't matter how old they are. That's where you need to be focused on building strong relationships, following their lead, picking up on their interests,
Yeah.
observing where they are, scaffolding them to what they need to be next in that developmental milestone, instead of just saying, oh, well, I have to be on page 56 of the math page, or the principal will come through and yell at me. It doesn't matter if they didn't get page 45.
Yeah.
I've got to be on page 56. That's not education.
No.
That's a factory model. The widgets are all going to go through the assembly line and they're all going to equal what they look like at the end. That is not what works. We are humans. Come on,
And
people.
let's not even go to the fact that we have teachers dropping out like crazy right now because of the pressures being put on them, that it's their fault, right? We've talked about this already in the segment, but the fact that it's their fault for children not learning. No, it's the system that's broken, not the teachers, not the kids. It's the system that's broken. And until we get the system back to something that I just suggested,
Mhm.
we're not going to be there. And we've got to get back on point, but we've also got to do it in a way like we were talking about a minute ago. It's got to be in a way that we're going to phase out this system we're in now, and we're going to phase in a whole new system, because it's going to take some education with teachers. With LiiNK, I do a 3-day training with them prior to ever starting this program in a school, because policies have to change, procedures have to change. So we've built what the school needs to look like, right? But now it's a matter of teaching this out to the masses, because you can't just flip a switch and be here.
That's exactly right.
And I'm going to open a can of worms as you wrap it up here, Deb, but you also got to be willing to get rid of the dead weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. You do. The teacher's been doing it this way for 45 years. Well, 45 years, it hasn't been working. So let's try something new.
Yeah.
And, it's a huge challenge, and why this work is so important, because you're showing evidence that what you are doing has a long-term benefit, instead of what we are currently struggling with, which is no long-term benefits, but instead lots of kids dropping out, lots of kids committing suicide, and lots of kids who are so anxious they're on anxiety medication when they're 6. Come on, people. We've got to switch. We have to make it switch. It's not working. All right, so don't go anywhere while I close this out, Debbie. So to learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at IPAUSA.org. Up in that top right-hand corner, if you want to learn more and hear more Porch Play Chats, subscribe to our YouTube channel, be a friend on our Facebook page, and magically every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear. I know. So until next time, keep on playing.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Debbie, I can't.